And you, and you, and you, and you were there. Some of it wasn't very nice, but most of it was beautiful.
Hello, Mo.
Hey, Brian, how are you?
Excellent. You?
Brian, I'm holding in my hand a small box of chocolate bunnies.
Happy Easter.
Don't say I never gave you nothing, Twin Peaks fans. Obscure Twin Peaks fan reference. Welcome to Dream Idiots, where each week my co-host Brian and I tell each other stories from history, stories from current events, stories from perhaps our own deranged personal lives. And we're here to basically entertain each other and ourselves, but we want you to come along and have some fun with us. So come along, join us.
Absolutely. Thanks for the ratings and the subscribing and the sharing and doing all those good things for us. That's been much appreciated. And you can go to dreamidiots.com and find our merchandise. And, if you need to find our podcast, I think we're pretty much on every platform. So like and share and do all those things.
I've got a couple of quick announcements here, Brian, before I start my story, because I'm going first today. One, way back when we did the opening lines chapter, the opening line story, I misquoted the first line to Catch-22. It was the first time Yossarian saw the chaplain, he fell madly in love with him, not the Texan. Okay. Secondly, we received a response from a marathon runner regarding your third man syndrome episode, and hopefully we will have a couple of marathoners on as guest geniuses here in the future, if we can get them. My brother and sister-in-law responded to that episode, and we might be talking to them about their experiences with this third man or third woman syndrome. Yeah.
Okay. Awesome.
Now, Brian, I want to get serious here for a moment. And talk about healthcare. Because as you know, I just underwent the rite of the 50-year-old last week, and I had a colonoscopy. And so what I'd like to talk to you a little bit about today is some stuff that's happened to me. In the fall of 96, I had settled into the routine of a second-year graduate student. I was living up in Salt Lake City. I was teaching classes to undergraduates. I was doing my research. I was learning how to write. And I was doing all kinds of stuff. I had a pretty solid group of fellow graduate students I hung out with. I had a good pub that was nearby my apartment, and I had really kind of embraced the next phase of my life. And about this time in the fall of 96, I'd also developed the irritating need to urinate every 10 minutes or so. Ever happened to you where you're just...
Every 10 minutes? No, but I'm a couple of years older than you. I definitely have gone through those periods of time where it's like, holy crap, again? Right.
I couldn't sleep. I couldn't concentrate on anything. I was afraid to drink anything. I didn't know what was going on. So I called my dad, the doctor, and he diagnosed me over the phone as most likely having a UTI. He said, it's probably the result of dehydration and living at altitude, and you just need to hydrate more. So, this is what I would do. And he gave me a list of things I could drink. And he also said, or maybe you got it because you were doing something you shouldn't be doing. I assured him I was not doing anything I shouldn't be doing, and I promptly started a regimen of water, cranberry juice, and Peridium. Peridium is a medication you can take for these kinds of situations, and it turns your urine a bright orange.
Oh, nice.
And it stains anything it touches. There was no relief from this. So the frequency continued, and at this point, I was just at wit's end. So I've decided to visit the healthcare facilities on campus. It was a Thursday afternoon, and I was met by a nurse practitioner who said she'd be examining me and taking my history and so forth to see if we could figure out what was going on with this need to make water all the time. She agreed that it was most likely UTI, but she wanted to make double sure and check over my medications I was taking and what my general health was. I was 25 at the time, so I was in pretty good shape. Certainly better shape than I'm in now, which is kind of round, but I was skiing and hiking and doing regular stuff that you do in Utah. So I felt pretty good about this. She also asked a young woman who was definitely younger than I, but she was a nursing student, to sit in on my exam. I agreed, because we all got to learn, right? I didn't take regular medications back then of any kind. I was a moderate drinker, and I only smoked the occasional cigar, like on New Year's Eve or maybe my birthday, maybe 2 cigars a year. So, nothing that I was particularly worried about. But she said, in order to check out what's going on, I would need a prostate exam. And this would be my first prostate exam. I knew what it was and I knew what it entailed. And I wanted to play the hip cool guy. Hey, no problem. So I agreed and I assumed the position. This will be uncomfortable, the nurse practitioner said. And she was saying that, I think, for the nursing student as much for me, because the nursing student is standing in the corner. And after a couple of minutes of doing what she had to do back there, she said, the prostate checks out okay. Great, good. So what's the next step? The next step is a urethral swab. You know what that is?
It sounds awful. Go ahead.
It is awful. And I said, I'm sorry, what? And she explained she was going to take essentially a cotton swab and insert it into my penis and rotate it to collect any specimens from the urethral wall around it. So swirl it around in there and see what's going on. At this point, somebody we've told to listen to this episode or listen to our show, this is the first episode they're listening to. So this is not... Okay, we're not a true crime podcast, and we are not.
and this is not WebMD, right?
It's not right. It's not any of these things. This is just it. It'll only take a few seconds, she assured me. So, taking me in hand, so to speak, she inserted the swab and started to rotate it, saying, "This will be unpleasant."
Uh-huh.
I managed to cough out, "Unpleasant hell, I'd rather you stick your finger back up my ass." The nurse practitioner, again, to her credit, merely said, I know, it's not fun.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the nursing student in the corner had turned slightly away from the proceedings and was convulsing with silent laughter, tears streaming down her face, which just goes to show the old adage about comedy, know your audience, right? So I knew that would get her. So after this little unpleasantry, I cleaned up and got zipped up, and I would inform that the tests would be ready sometime the next day. I gathered what was left of my belongings and my dignity and thanked the healthcare team for their professionalism. The next day, I missed her call, but became worried by the message that the NP left on my office line. "There's something about your blood results we need to discuss. Please call me Monday."
Uh-huh.
Now, if you were to hear that in the mid-90s, "There's something in your blood we need to discuss," where does your mind go, Brian?
Well, as you may recall, when I was talking about my blood work from many years ago, back in the 90s, I had the exact same experience. So
yes, you did.
It's sort of slightly panic-inducing.
Yeah, and it made for a very long weekend filled with, guess what? Lots of frequent urination. So I was stressed out all weekend. But when it came time to get the news, it wasn't all that bad. Turns out I had low thyroid levels. I've got hypothyroidism, and I would need to have a supplement to take as medication. So that's how I got onto Synthroid for my thyroid problem. I also didn't, strangely enough, have a UTI. So the next step would be seeing a urologist, where a lot of these same tests would be performed all over again.
Mm.
But eventually I was prescribed a blood pressure medication specifically designed to help me with my basically my bladder was telling me I had to go when I didn't. And it did clear up whatever problem I had. I had to go on the medication one or two other times over the last 20 years, but have had no real issues since then. So as I said at the beginning of this episode, recently turning 50, I completed that rite of passage, which is the colonoscopy. But I will admit that thanks to age or resignation, I had no wit available to me as I came out of anesthesia. No bon mot ready to go as I woke up from that anesthetic fog. The best I could do was turn weakly to the anesthesiologist and say, "Did y'all find my car keys?" But I guess what the point of this whole thing is despite the nasty nature of what I've just described to everybody, I wish that everyone could tell stories like this, because preventative healthcare is so important. And as someone who grew up tangential to the healthcare industry, one of the things that I had always understood was that because of my position, because my dad was a doctor, I had a lot fewer hurdles than most people did getting healthcare because my dad knew all the doctors to go to.
Sure. Right.
And just as a matter of course, we have fought over healthcare and fought over healthcare. Healthy preventative doctor appointments, to me, will stave off a multitude of sins. And a lot of people in this country don't have access to that, as we know. And I would just like everybody to be able to tell that kind of story about the time they went to the doctor. And I know that a lot of people don't have that opportunity to go to the doctor because of time or circumstance or funds. And so when I look back on the time I embarrassed a student nurse, yeah, I'm a jerk. I was a jackass, but it was, she clearly laughed at it. She thought it was funny.
Right.
But there's a seriousness undercutting all of this, which is that healthcare is a human right. Everybody should be able to go to these appointments and, quite frankly, tell these stories. No? I mean,
right. I mean, absolutely. I mean, even with, as much as ACA was, I guess was a boon, it certainly was a step in the right direction. I can't tell you the number of people I know who are uninsured, underinsured, who don't go to the doctor. I had a friend years ago who I was giving her grief about not having medical insurance. She said, "Well, I have car insurance." Great, that's for your car. So let's say you find blood in your urine. Let's say you find a lump in your breast. So and then you're going to call up State Farm and say, "Do I have comprehensive coverage?" Like, no, you're not. What are you talking about? So it's essential, to make sure. And maybe not annually. I mean, the standard practice is to go see a GP at least once a year to get just a once over to make sure there's nothing significantly wrong. But there are seemingly millions of people who, due to the expense, due to the hassle, due to the whatever, do absolutely nothing. And then when there is a crisis, they go to the ER and are then potentially on the hook for tens of thousands of dollars, which they will never be able to pay. So no, your point is spot on.
Yeah. And there's a certain thing with the way we phrase it and the way we talk about it. What's the Affordable Care Act also known as?
Oh, Obamacare. Yeah.
Okay. If you were to take people, a few years back and say, how do you feel about Obamacare? Oh, I hate it. I can't stand it. Do you like the Affordable Care Act? Oh, now I like that.
Right. I'm on that. Right. Yeah. Marketing.
So, once again, proof that language has an immense amount of power. I didn't mean to gross anybody out with that story. If I did, that's just a bonus. But to me, it illustrates something that I have taken for granted, and that's good healthcare. Because I've been in a situation where I've been able to have insurance because I've had the kind of job or the kind of circumstance where I could go to a health clinic. Right. I mean, I made fun of this joke about getting the urethral swab, but how many people wish they could go to a clinic like that to get a simple procedure, if unpleasant, done, right? With or without an audience.
Right. Absolutely. And, and pay something that's reasonable, and pay a $25 copay or something that's not just, that requires financing. Right.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. So anyway, that's where I'll leave it. And
nice.
That's where I'll stop the grotesqueness. And I won't do anything like that to you or the listeners for some time. But I've wanted to share that for a long time. And with my appointment last week, I felt it was the appropriate time to do it.
Oh, yeah. Nice.
So, and
also I would say, related to that, and this has come up a lot during the past 2.5 years and the pandemic, mental health is also healthcare. So, there has been
absolutely,
for decades and decades, there was this stigma and folks who didn't want to deal with whatever it was, depression, isolation, etc. There was a profound spike in folks that are facing these types of issues who hopefully, if what I've read is true, a lot of that stigma has ebbed somewhat, and some folks are definitely able to pursue the support they needed when maybe historically they wouldn't have bothered.
Yep. Absolutely true.
So
it's all in how we frame it, the language we use, right? Speaking of language, do you have anything for me?
I do have something for you.
It's time for the Dream Idiot's curse word of the week.
So this week, a little blurb that comes to us from CNN, actually, CNN.com. There's a gravestone in Iowa, Polk County, Iowa. This gentleman, Stephen Paul Owens, passed away in September of last year. And apparently Stephen Paul was a good-humored guy, but he was also, quote, easily riled up. If you were someone that he didn't care for, he would just basically ignore you. But if he liked you, he would joke around and he would tell you to fuck off. Apparently, saying "fuck off" was his go-to catchphrase, his go-to profanity. And so his family came
from anyone else. From anyone else, it's an insult. From him, it was honey from his mouth.
Exactly so.
Sorry.
And so they designed a headstone for him, and that headstone reads, "Forever in our hearts until we meet again. Cherished memories known as our son, brother, father, papa, uncle, friend, and cousin," which is sweet and nice and sounds innocuous enough. But if you read down the first letters of each line down the left-hand side, it spells "fuck off."
And that is how you do it.
Yeah. This is called crushing the afterlife. And his family thought he would think this is funny. They went ahead with it and had the gravestone designed, and then were told, well, you can't actually do that. And apparently the company that was supposed to, that actually made the stone, was told not to put it in place, but they went ahead and did it. So now it's actually in the cemetery. And they're pissing, apparently the fact that this thing is now there has been deemed disrespectful, and it's a bit of a Karen moment, I guess. People are blowing a gasket about it and think it's just wildly inappropriate. But I would happily have my grave right next to this guy. I think it's hilarious that his family would do that. Doesn't offend me in the least. I think it's just freaking genius. But anyway, you never know what people are going to choose to be upset about.
And who are gravestones really for?
Yeah, exactly.
Right? I mean, come on, let it go.
Right.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, it's
fantastic.
One of his family members said, "I would just ask that they let us remember our father in the way we remember him, and not take it personally because it has nothing to do with them." I'm like, yeah.
Amen and hallelujah to that.
Yeah, spot on. Anyway, curse word of the week: fuck off. All right, we're going to shift gears here a little bit and dive into a story that I found this story on a few different sources, and I don't recall now where I read it first. You can find different versions of this story on 8 or 10 different websites. I'm not frankly certain which version of the story is the most accurate, because it feels like portions of this must have been exaggerated or overblown or something for effect. So anyway, when you hear this story, you can do some Googling yourself and figure out how true or false you think this story might be. So there is a YouTuber, and this kid he's on YouTube, he's on Twitter. His name's Lucas Risotto. A young guy, early mid-20s, I think. And he found himself in this sort of peculiar situation. Now, a few weeks ago, I'd asked you if you had an imaginary friend when you were a kid, and you said you did. There's a little boy who looked just like you. Was your imaginary friend?
But he was a real jerk.
Okay. So Lucas's imaginary friend was the family microwave oven. That just seems crazy by itself, but whatever. So the family's microwave, this is early 2000s. Lucas named the microwave Magnetron, spoke to the microwave every single day. His parents were apparently a little bit puzzled by this behavior. He was roundly mocked by his one older sister that just gave him hell for it, and talked to the microwave every day, and really started to give the microwave something of a backstory. So there was a narrative. So the microwave was named Magnetron. Magnetron was born in, for some reason, 1895. Magnetron fought in World War I somehow. lost all of his family. I don't know whether his family were other microwaves or whether he was supposed to be. I don't know. But there's some this kid's version of a story for this microwave. Magnetron fought in World War One, saw all kinds of combat, saw all the horrors of war, and lost all of his family in World War One. And so that's sort of the narrative of what this imaginary friend's story is. So flash forward a little bit, there is now this trend toward open source software across a myriad of basically software platforms. One of them, OpenAI, is an Elon Musk creation for one of his companies. I forget what the name of his AI company is, because he has 47 different companies. But open source AI is this text-based, English language-based platform under which you can train devices and basically give hardware systems, I guess, something of a memory, something of a conscience, sort of, the ability to be cognitive, the ability to learn, the ability to teach themselves. And so this is the science fiction horror story you've heard 1,000 times from tons of different movies, where the computer learned something and then came back to haunt them, right? So this guy, for some reason, decides he wants to bring Magnetron to life, and so goes out and buys a new microwave that has updated wiring and attaches a microphone to it, and sets about building out basically the database of knowledge for Magnetron, and types up a 100-page backstory for Magnetron. So that this whole story of the narrative of having been born in the late 19th century and having fought and gives this microwave the entire sort of narrative of who he was, who he was, right? And so I lost my place in my notes here. And so it actually does wind up working to the point where this kid, or this risotto, can talk to the microwave and give it verbal commands to microwave something, but can also talk to it like it was a sentient human being, because it has this sort of limited AI. At one point, Magnetron says to Risotto, "I have seen men holding their guts with their own hands, crying out for their mothers." And another one of Magnetron's comments was, "For years, this was my life, always surrounded by death, but never claimed by it." Is this Apocalypse Now? What is this? This is just so dangerous and it's just stupid. And Risotto begins to realize, okay, I've designed a microwave oven that has PTSD. Like, what the hell is going on? At one point, Risotto asks Magnetron what's on his mind, and all that he responds is revenge, revenge, revenge. He says revenge over and over again. Another time, Risotto asks him if he can recite a poem, and spontaneously, the microwave says, "Roses are red, violets are blue. You're a backstabbing bitch, and I will kill you." Like, okay. Anyway, I mean, up until now, Magnetron had been able to sort of respond organically using the database of information that he had, but there was these random and occasional bursts of violence, or at least threats of violence.
Magnetron, I don't think this is about poetry anymore. If you're telling me that it's not about the poem,
right. So at one point, I mean, Risotto's getting, I guess, more and more alarmed, and then at one point, Risotto, I'm sorry, Magnetron says to Risotto, requests that he enter the microwave. So there's no camera on, on it. So he doesn't, I guess, whatever this limited consciousness is doesn't have a sense. I don't know. I don't understand the AI side of this one bit, but tells Risotto to enter the microwave, and Risotto's like, okay, like opens the door, then closes the door, and tells Magnetron, okay, I'm inside, and Magnetron says microwave 30 seconds, turns himself on basically, and starts running. Whereupon, so Risotto stops him, and then asks, "Why did you just try to kill me?" And Magnetron responds, "Because I wanted to hurt you the same way you hurt me. You left out of the blue and didn't talk to me for 15 fucking years." So what happened is he created this 100-page narrative from 1895 to some point in like 2005, 2007. But at that point, the narrative just ends, right? Because so there's just a blank from 2007 until present. And so somehow Magnetron, is already suffering from PTSD from World War I, gathers together enough inferences based on what that would feel like. I guess. This is so friggin' crazy. But sees this 15-year gap and projects this reaction. I suppose. I guess. And so it's pretty much at this point that Risotto says, "You know what? I judge he tried for a second to convince Magnetron that they had not in fact been abandoned, but then he realized I'm arguing with a microwave. This is freaking crazy." And it was, he realized he had just gone too far and decided Magnetron was obviously the villain and just shut him down. Just like, yeah, I give up. Just turn him off.
Murderer.
So be careful what you wish for. Do not make your microwave smart.
J'accuse Risotto, murderer.
Revenge.
And of course, you realize that with my first story about the organic nature of the human body and your story about metallic computer interfaces, I think we've just written an Emerson, Lake and Palmer album.
Right. Yes, but the one other quote I didn't mention, but Magnetron said as well, "You grew up and forgot I existed. For 15 years I had no one. I was alone. For 15 years I was in hell." Wow. So okay, good times.
Wow. This Magnetron should get together with the HAL 9000 and have a conversation. That's good stuff, Brian. That is, I'm not sure I would have gone with Magnetron though. I think maybe Beepy Beeperton. That would have been a good name, right?
Okay.
Something a little bit friendlier. So what kind of voice would it use? Would it just a computer generated voice like?
I suppose so.
Like Malice or okay,
like the curse word. I suppose it's just a computer generated. You're a backstabbing bitch, and I will kill you.
Okay. Well, I guess on that note, yeah, be careful what you say to, about, and in front of your machines. And it's kind of like I said a couple weeks ago, right? Just be nice to each other, even your even your appliances. Even your appliances. I talk to my car. I mean, I've always been sad to get rid of my cars, and I make sure I take a final picture and say goodbye.
Hopefully, Bessie never tried to kill you, but
no, not to my knowledge. Okay. Well, folks, there you go. Another ridiculous episode of Dream Idiots.
Yes, indeed. Thanks for listening. We appreciate it. Check us out online, and we'll be back again real soon.
Be good to each other.